What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video. I'm Michigan Sports Talk here, and today we're going to be talking about Michigan versus the NCAA. More in particular, where things stand right now for Michigan, what's going to happen. Obviously, Michigan, it came out. They are prepared to self-impose Sherrone Moore for 2 games against Central Michigan and Nebraska. Whether or not the NCAA accepts that, adds more on, remains to be seen. But we're going to be going over what could happen, what other punishments could happen, what the NCAA could be looking for. So we're going to be talking about all that in this video. But before we do want to give a shout out to our channel members. Thank you guys all so much, and thank you all for supporting the channel. Then I also wanted to mention real quick here, I did recently make a TikTok profile where I'll be posting little short clips of my long form videos and also potentially other content as well. So go ahead, follow me on TikTok. Should just be at Michigan Sports Talk. And then so yeah, let's go ahead and get right into it. Michigan again is expected to suspend Sherrone Moore 2 games and also potentially apply recruiting restrictions to him. But again, it really just comes down to whether or not the NCAA agrees with those punishments, what they could be adding on to it. But again, according to Chris Ballas of the Wolverine, Sherrone Moore's lawyers continue to negotiate with the NCAA about a settlement leading up to a hearing with the Committee on Infractions. And the Committee on Infractions will be June 6th and the 7th for violations stemming from Signgate. Now, here's the thing, obviously Michigan responded to the NCAA's notice of allegations fiercely and essentially, implied that the NCAA was overstepping based on little to no evidence. As far as, Sherrone Moore or other coaches or anybody in the program knowing what Connor Stalions was doing, there's really been no evidence. There hasn't been any evidence come out that Sherrone Moore knew what Connor Stalions was doing. The only thing that the NCAA has that we know on Sherrone Moore is, yeah, he deleted text messages, and that's really what the NCAA is punishing Sherrone Moore for. That is the only thing they have evidence of, is Sherrone Moore deleting text messages and basically not cooperating with the NCAA and the investigation. The only thing is the NCAA doesn't appear to be prepared to accept just the 2 games and the 2-game suspension on Sherrone Moore, which is why Sherrone Moore could potentially face more, games on top of the already proposed, weeks 3 and 4 suspension against Central Michigan and Nebraska. And then again, whether or not the NCAA comes down with harsher punishments remains to be seen. As Dan Wetzel has said, the NCAA can do anything. Whether or not they have evidence to do so remains to be seen, but it doesn't appear they have that much evidence. The only evidence, again, they have is Sherrone Moore not cooperating, deleting the text from Connor Stalions and himself, which again, they have already recovered those texts though via device imaging, and there's nothing really on it. None of them indicated any wrongdoing on his part or any knowledge of the extent of Stalions' operation. And right now it does appear Sherrone Moore appears to be more of a victim of his position as current Michigan head coach, because let's be honest, is a 2-game suspension really right to hand down to a coach who deleted text messages, most likely because he wanted to disassociate himself from it, thinking it might be a bad look? Having text messages with someone who was accused of wrongdoing, I guarantee it, almost everybody, if not a lot of people, would do the same thing Sherrone Moore did, but this is the way the NCAA can really kind of frame it to punish the Michigan program. This is how they're going to come down hard on Michigan if they want to, and if they do, but that doesn't mean Michigan, will just let it slide. They can definitely fight it and take it to litigation. Now, as far as postseason bans, vacating wins, athletic director Ward Manuel has already come out and say that there's been no talk of vacating wins or postseason bans. And it's also kind of hard to when the NCAA president Charlie Baker came out and said that nobody can say Michigan didn't win the national championship fair and square. So, it's either going to come down to Sherrone Moore, Michigan, the NCAA reaching an agreement, whether or not the NCAA adds on more games to Sherrone Moore's suspension, again, remains to be seen. Obviously, Sherrone Moore wants to go coach on the road at Oklahoma. That was his alma mater. Anybody in that situation would want to coach in that game, and quite frankly, he should be able to. It's not just that it is a big game and one of the biggest games on Michigan's schedule, but it's also an important game for Sherrone Moore. But, Michigan could agree to a 3 or 4 game suspension for Sherrone Moore just to get this out of the way and get it over with. Obviously, there's going to be expected show causes on Harbaugh, Stallions, and other potential former Michigan assistants. Not that any of that really matters, other than for Connor Stallions, as Harbaugh and many other former Michigan assistants are already at the NFL level. There also could be recruiting restrictions for Moore, which Michigan, again, may, try and self-impose and come to an agreement where the 2-game suspension on top of the recruiting restrictions for Moore would be enough for the NCAA to agree upon. But really, anything more than that, Michigan should fight. Now, again, the committee on infractions will be taking place June 6th and 7th, and they also have until late August to rule, and then we'll really find out what we're working with and if Michigan will fight it or not. But again, if Michigan does fight it, I mean, this could take years. If they do fight it, it would go to an appeal and then potentially litigation, and that could take years. And then obviously, many have talked about, would the NCAA even have any power at that point, at least for college football? Because let's be honest, their power, their control over the sport is slowly dying. I mean, their governance is very weak. They completely mishandled NIL and all that stuff. It's just gotten out of hand and kind of out of their control at this point. So, the NCAA could be gone in the future in college football at least. But let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Obviously, there's been a lot of you commenting on this situation, and obviously, for Michigan and Sherrone Moore to pick their self-imposed games that they would suspend Sherrone Moore for, which would be Central Michigan and Nebraska. It does seem a little silly, and obviously Michigan is just trying to get out in front right now. But in my opinion and many others' opinions, 2 games already, a 2-game suspension for Sherrone Moore seems to be too much. So the fact that Michigan is even willing to do that and self-impose a 2-game suspension on Sherrone Moore for him deleting text messages and allegedly not cooperating with the NCAA because he deleted text messages, even though they did recover those text messages via device imaging and found nothing related to Sherrone Moore knowing anything about Connor Stallion's sign stealing scheme and all of that. I mean, it's pretty silly, but, that's where we stand right now. If I had to guess, the NCAA is probably going to want to suspend Sherrone Moore for a couple more games. But if it goes, more than that, and they want to come down hard on Michigan more than that, Michigan definitely and should fight. But, again, we'll have to wait basically the whole summer, for the ruling. It's a slow process. The NCAA is very slow. It started in 2023. It's 2025 already. Players from that national championship team have already left. Many coaches have left. There's not many coaches, especially on the defensive side, that are a part of this program anymore. But the fact that this is all stemming from Sherrone Moore deleting Connor Stallion's text messages, and then later the NCAA, getting those text messages anyway, finding out there's really nothing on them, and he's still going to get punished for it. It's just a very silly situation in my opinion. The NCAA, again, doesn't have any other evidence but that, it seems, and that's really right now the only, thing they're hitting Michigan on. But that's where things stand right now, and with that, that's going to wrap up this video. Just wanted to talk about this situation in Michigan versus the NCAA, Sherrone Moore's suspension, what potentially could happen, and what other punishments could come, and ultimately what the NCAA will do. It's obviously up to them whether or not they agree what other punishments they're going to add on to Michigan's proposed punishments, and then how far Michigan is willing to accept the NCAA's punishments, and how far they will go to potentially fight the NCAA if they feel the punishments are, overreaching or overstepping. But with that, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to go ahead, drop a like, comment down below, and subscribe for more on this channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And with that, hope you guys all have a great rest of your day, and we will see you guys in the next video. Go Blue.